Hey everybody, and welcome back for part 2 of our series ranking the areas of Bloodborne. If you haven't seen part 1, be sure to click here for some of the worst areas the game has to offer. And be sure to stick around until the end of the video for an announcement on the Demon Souls survey. With that said, we'll jump right in with number 10. In terms of the 3 nightmare areas, I can't argue at all that this is the greatest. A big reason for that is there's no environmental hazard. But there are shadows of YHARNAM, more winter lanterns, and the nastiest pigs you've ever seen. While the pigs may be nasty, they make up the best soul farming route in the game outside of the Chalice dungeons. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention that this is one of the very few designated PvP areas in the game. The area also included the one and only Blood Rock in the game prior to the DLC updates that allowed you to purchase them with 60 insight. Lastly, this is the technical final level of the main game, because once you slay the nightmare at the end, the Hunter's Dream goes through a bit of a makeover. It's a solid final level with PvP fun, soul farming, and many other goodies to be had. If you want to talk the spookiest area in the game, it's gotta be Upper Cathedral Ward. You start with a few church doctors, but then you start seeing these twisted, skinless babies all over the place. Then once you make it inside, the lights are quickly trounced by 5 werewolves that are extremely powerful. Then you got some flying out of windows, brain suckers galore, and the legendary yet eerie make contact gesture. As horrifying as this area can be, that's a big part of what makes it so great. The music, atmosphere, and vicious enemies add an ominous feeling that is a bit hard to shake. Of course, it caps off everything with a bunch of blue goobers, but then again, they happen to be worshipping what I'd consider to be the hardest boss in the main game. That means there's also plenty of lore to go around, so it's easy to see why Upper Cathedral Ward makes it into the top half. Going to Old YHARNAM for the first time is a bit of a foreboding experience. From the moment you reach the door, you're warned hunters aren't wanted within. Wait a minute, beasts don't write messages.
You there!
Oh god! That may seem like a bit of an overreaction, but believe me, it's not. This hunter has decided that the beasts of Old YHARNAM should be protected as they pose no threat to the world above and are really diseased people. Whether or not you agree with him, prepare to get obliterated by his Gatling gun for not leaving. That makes a good portion of the level of duck and dive experience that honestly can be pretty frustrating if you don't know how to handle it. One thing that does make the level easier is using a torch in your offhand because the beast patients will recoil in fear. Truly though, even though the spray and pray hunter can be a bit annoying, it adds a sense of pressure that can be very exciting. The level itself is very well designed with appropriate shortcuts, great enemy placement, and the lore of this being a ground zero so to speak on the beast outbreak, which resulted in the scorching and abandonment of the place. It all ends in the Church of the Good Chalice with sexy old skin flaps. This area is the first of 3 early game areas that is incredibly well designed, boasts good lore, and is a pleasure to explore. The second of the aforementioned areas is Cathedral Ward. Depending on whether or not you buy the Hunter Chief emblem, you may explore Old YHARNAM or the entire Cathedral Ward first. And let me tell you, this area is huge! There are so many branching paths to other areas that it can be overwhelming for first-time players. Seriously, if you count the DLC, this area connects to Hunter's Nightmare, Healing Church Workshop, Old YHARNAM, Henwick Charnel Lane, and Yarhagul. Bloodborne may not have quite the level of interconnectivity as Dark Souls, but this area is one of its most impressive in that regard. The enemy variety in this area is fantastic and pretty creepy. Here you're introduced to church doctors, and geez, these guys have spooky faces. Luckily, they are possibly the easiest enemies to parry in the entire series. Just shoot at literally any moment of their entire attack animation and you can riposte them. While this makes them somewhat of pushovers, I like them as early game tools to teach new players the way of the visceral attack. Finally, this area also houses what is effectively the NPC safe hub in this game, hosted by this creepy blind dude that really seems like he wants you to send people here so he can feast on them as the Odin Chapel. Turns out he's just a socially awkward weirdo. I mean it, some of his dialogue pains me to listen to.
If you please, kind hunter, when the night of the hunt passes, suppose we could be friends?
But you can use it as a safe haven for YHARNAM's sane folk. Well, sane might be stretching it a little bit. With that said, I have to agree that Cathedral Ward is one of the most vital, best designed, and enjoyable areas in the main game. Now this actually surprised me. I really expected the Hunter's Dream to make the top 3. To be honest though, I totally agree with the placement. Despite the fact that this is personally my second favorite hub area aesthetically, there's very little going on here at all. I mean, we've got the doll waifu and this old coot, and then there's our fan club, but that's it. This area serves more to upgrade your weapons, place runes, level up, and travel to and from locations more than anything else. That's totally fine because that's all this area needs to be. We're also fortunate that this area is very rich in lore, and it's a real treat having the final boss battle take place in the Fields of the Dream. Though despite its usefulness, lore, and beauty, it's hard to argue this area has more to offer than the areas in the top 5. And so we reach our first DLC area in the top quarter of the list. If I haven't raved enough about Bloodborne's DLC through my boss rankings, let the fact that the lowest area clocks in at a 9.52 be indicative of its quality. I cannot stress enough how much I love this DLC, and I'm glad you all feel the same way. There's a ton to love about this fishy hamlet. First of all, the enemies here feel very unique in comparison to anything else in the entire game. Well, maybe not all of them. On the whole though, it was very refreshing. The design of the area itself is excellent with tons of varying levels and fantastic enemy placements. There's also tons of goodies here to be collected if you can defeat the legendary shit whales. Sorry, let me pause here. I'll get a chance to talk about this in full at some point, but let me just give a tease now saying this is one of the hardest fucking things I've ever done in a Blood Souls game. If you pull out the victory, you get my personal favorite weapon in all of Blood Souls, the Rakuyo. Then there's the Blood Rocks, Winter Lanterns dropping 22% attack increased gems, and the level caps off with the hardest boss in all of Blood Souls. What doesn't this area have? Well, it's not missing much. I didn't even mention the lore, but I'll end it here because I could keep gushing on forever about how much I love this place, despite its shit whales. It was a tight race, but the beginning area in the Old Hunters DLC just edged out its last. If I were making the choice, I would have done it the same way. The Hunter's Nightmare is a downright epic way to kick off the DLC. You start in a twisted version of the Cathedral Ward and are immediately greeted by some bloodthirsty hunters sporting some badass gear. Watching the old hunters take on the beast is a lot of fun to watch, and it adds to the atmosphere. As you progress, you'll recognize warped versions of other areas like Central YHARNAM and even see familiar faces like old Skin Flaps. By the end of the level, the blood-addled dream becomes literal with pools of blood everywhere with skinless bodies writhing in it. It's grotesque, horrific, and fucking awesome. And at the end of it all, not only is this one of my favorite areas in Bloodborne, but I think it's one of the best FromSoft has made overall and serves as a great introduction into a fantastic DLC. But when it comes to introductory areas, I don't know if it's ever been done better than Central YHARNAM. I mean that, I genuinely think this is one of the best tutorial areas not only in Blood Souls, but in all of gaming. It's got everything you could want, a massive and intricately connected map, varied enemy design with weaklings to introduce you to Bloodborne's combat, and more monstrous versions to test what you've learned. The rock trolls are the perfect enemy to practice gun parries on, the bonfire is the first skill check in the game, and it includes 2 bosses. One that teaches you all you need to know about smacking that booty, and the other that punishes you brutally if you don't adapt to Bloodborne's aggressive style. When I played Bloodborne for the first time, I had no idea how I was going to feel coming from the Souls series. Let me tell you, by the time I made it through Central YHARNAM, I knew I was playing a masterpiece. No question about it, this ranking shocked me the most. I honestly found this area to be just okay at best. Really all this area is a collection of floors stacked on top of each other filled with some seriously slaptastic enemies and that guy. If you think those guys had no chill, beware of this insanely aggressive brain monster. The goal of the area is to traverse your way to the hall's peak and lower the staircase in the center so you can access the boss area. Once you do, it causes quite a few changes to the level. There are various different traps in store like acid bookcases, Gatling gun grandpas, and endless brain dudes. As they continue thinking about it though, the design of this level is actually kinda brilliant. The easiest way I can describe it is as a vertical maze. There's so many different nooks and crannies to look through, and with traps abound, you feel tense the whole time. Not to mention the atmosphere left by all the disturbing patients of the Healing Church experiments. So even though I couldn't understand why this would be ranked so high at first glance, I think this area does have the lore, design, and excitement to be considered a top level in Bloodborne. I didn't think it was gonna be anything else. With an over-the-top score of more than 10.5 out of 10, Castle CAINHURST is the undisputed best area in Bloodborne as voted by you. The first thing that stands out in this area is a stark contrast to anything else you've found to this point in the game. Searching through a snow-coated gothic castle is quite the entrancing experience. Add in a bunch of enemies that are unique to this area and you've got quite something on your hands. There's bloody ball sacks, screaming wenches, custodians that are basically the same thing as the sorting hat fuckers from Dark Souls 3, and creepy gargoyles. This area also houses the blood-tinged specialty weapon weapons due to the CAINHURST Vileblood's affinity for blood arts. I'm personally a huge fan of the Shikage and Evelyn build, so I always make an early trek to Martyr Logarius' throne, which I have to mention, there may not be many more sights in Blood Souls as beautiful as this snow-kissed rooftop. The insane thing is this area is completely optional. In fact, I bet a lot of people miss this area entirely on their first playthrough. You have to head through the back caverns of the Forbidden Woods to the Poison Lake within, then go and use Sepka's back door for the summons, and even then you have to know where to take them. Even with a helpful description, I'm sure many players didn't know to head to this area in Hemwick. And it's a total shame, because you and I can both agree that Castle Cainhurst is one of Bloodborne's finest towers. Well everyone, I hope you enjoyed ranking the areas of Bloodborne with me. Coming up next in the series is Demon Souls. If you check out the description, you'll find a link to the survey. I'll leave it open for the next couple of days to give you all time to weigh in with your thoughts. If you enjoy the countdown, be sure to check out my other Blood Souls rankings and subscribe for more great gaming content. On that note, I know uploads have been less frequent lately and I wanted to apologize. I've been working hard behind the scenes to launch a new series, get the Twitch channel up and running, and I went on my first vacation in about a year. Rest assured though, YouTube is my first priority and all the work I've been doing is about to pay off. Stay tuned in the coming days for a new series to launch, and as always, thank you all for watching this video, and I'll see you in another one soon.